All right, the next design element we're going to add is the background, kind of that little glow that kind of goes around the corner. Now, if we look at the ending file, you can kind of see it right here. It's this little slight half circle and it kind of peeks out just slightly over here on this side. We're going to add that element behind the design file right here. So we'll come back to our mockup again, and I'm going to take all of the shapes that make up each of these individual blocks that we kind of wireframed out and put them inside of a group. So I'll highlight each of those and Command G, and I'm just going to call this layer wireframe blocks. And then we're going to add our little blurb back there. Now I'm going to get the lasso tool in order to do this. There's a few ways we could do this as well, but let's get the lasso tool, and I'm just going to try to freehand. I'm just going to do this really quick and show you. I'm going to kind of try to freehand a shape that's similar to what that shape was before. Now you can see the issue here right off the bat is this lasso tool is actually snapping to the guides as well, and I definitely don't want this while I'm freehanding this shape. So I'm going to turn off snapping. So I'll turn off snap so that when I'm freehanding this shape, it doesn't try to snap to those guides. So let's just kind of create this. We may need to do it once or twice until we get a result that we're happy with, but we'll just kind of quickly freehand around there, drop down in, and just peek out over here just a little bit and come back up here to where we started. So we'll try this. Maybe I'll nudge it over and up a few pixels first to see if this works for us. So let's create a new layer above everything else here, just an empty layer. And we want to feather this shape before we fill it. That's going to give us that nice gradient or that kind of smooth edge on these outside borders. So I'm going to go to my select menu, down to modify and over to feather and select this. And you may need to play with a few values here until you're happy with your result. I'm going to choose maybe 25 pixel feather, which means that on either side of my marquee, it's going to feather that out 25 pixels in and 25 pixels out when I make this selection. So I'll hit OK, and it may not look like anything actually happens, but it did in fact change that marquee and feather those edges. And you won't be able to see it until you actually fill this object with a color. So I'm going to choose white. I'll switch to make sure my foreground color is white and do the Alt Delete or Alt Backspace trick to fill that shape. And you can see right away that the edge is indeed feathered. It kind of has that nice gradual fade out, which is kind of a nice effect there. And then I want to take this layer, and it's actually going to go behind all of those blocks. So I'm going to stick it right behind everything there. And we'll take the opacity, and we'll take the opacity all the way down just to around, I don't know, 25% or something like that. We want it to be fairly subtle. And I'm going to turn off the guide layer for a second so I can see that a little bit better. And I'm also going to hide the guides, which is Command semicolon, excuse me. And then we can kind of see how that looks. Now, one quick thing I noticed I need to fix is this inner circle right here, which is going to be the featured slider, needs to come down one tick as well. That needs to come down 10 pixels. So I'm going to hurry and fix that. I'll zoom up in here and let's turn back on those guides. And I need to bring down a guide that this right here is at 150, so it needs to come down to 160. And we'll drop a guide there. And then we can open up this layer here and free transform it. That's actually my rectangle 3. I should have named these. I'll just name them quickly. This is the featured layer. This right here is the content box. This one is the sidebar box. And that one there is the entire background box. I'll just call that BG. So let's come up to the featured slider, free transform that, and drop that down right on 420. Okay, now I can just get rid of that guide really quick. I just needed that for a second. And now that matches up how that's supposed to. And I need to actually fix these two down here as well because they're one tick down as well. They should have that same cushion. So I'll edit these at the same time. I can select both layers. Whoops, don't click on that. You hold there. Click one, hold shift, click the other one, free transform, and then we can pull these things up. Right now they're at the 70. It's kind of hard to tell because it's snapping there, but they need to come up 10 pixels, which is, I think, right there. We'll consider that good. It may not be exactly 10 pixels right now, but when we get into the HTML and CSS, we'll make sure it's exactly 10 pixels. Okay, so back up here to this little faded shape. I'll minimize these again, and let's hide those guides. Now you may need to tweak this shape according to your liking. You can free transform that shape. You just select it and free transform, and you can kind of increase it or shrink it down or play around with your opacity. But just adjust that until you're somewhat happy with the outcome. So you can see here in the final composition, this one just comes out a little bit, and then it kind of peaks out a little bit over here. I like this one a little bit better. It seems to come out quite a bit more. So I may readjust this one. I can just delete that layer and try again. So let's try that again. I'll do a little shape here. So I'm going to come out a little bit bigger over there. And then cruise over here and poke out a little bit. Maybe that's a little bit too low, but that's okay. We'll fill it. Whoops, let's feather it first. I'm going to do a little bit more feather this time as well. On my feather this time, I'm going to choose 40 pixels. Hit OK. Command delete to fill that layer. Whoops, sorry. Alt delete to fill that layer with the foreground color. And then we'll take that opacity again and bring it way down. So what this does visually is it just adds a slight bit of visual weight up here to the top left corner, which is where our logo is going to be in the end. So it's just going to kind of add a little bit of enhancement or a little glow almost around our logo, which will sit right up in here, just to kind of enhance this top corner and kind of draw the eye into that section of the website. So again, then we can kind of take this and maybe move it around a little bit and tweak it a little bit and free transform it or whatnot, but I'll consider that good. And let's move on to the middle sections.